Welcome to the Truth Over Facts podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, my co host, Ronnie.
What's up, Dill baby? How we doing tonight?
Yeah, we're doing all right. We shot down that big ass balloon, the big
Sh-
douchebag.
Yeah, yeah. After it traveled across the whole country, dog.
Yeah, I heard there was another one in South America.
Oh yeah, when'd you hear that?
Well, I heard that there was one in South America that
Oh,
was
I heard that
spotted.
there was one in. Wasn't there one in Japan too? I thought
Probably,
there
they're
was like
everywhere.
one in Japan or something. They had something up on Twitter where it showed pictures of multiple balloons in various locations throughout the world. But yeah, China was saying they were weather balloons.
Right.
But once they once they start floating over the intercontinental ballistic missiles, then something's up, dog. I think it
Right.
becomes more than just a weather balloon.
But that's what I don't understand. Like, the shit's flying over missile silos and stuff like that, nuclear missile silos.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is where, like, I keep saying this shit over and over again, like how incompetent the government, like, are we really that incompetent as a country to the point where we're just like, oh, it's a big ass like China balloon. Oh, it'll be fine. But it's like the government can shoot the pecker off of a fucking mosquito from like 500 miles away with thermal goggles and shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They
Or
can find those,
satellites.
yeah, from a satellite and shit. They know like how many squares left of my toilet paper roll I got left, but they can't figure out that this is a Chinese balloon and stuff like that. That's what I mean. Like, have we just reached the pinnacle of like just insanity where it's like the shit is so stupid, it's intentional,
Well, there's a
right?
lot of people out there saying that. Well, they're just saying, yeah, of course Joe Biden didn't shoot it down because he's already bought and paid for by the Chinese regime.
Right. And I just saw this one thing on Twitter where it was Mark Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
He's a senator of what, Florida, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he was on live and he tried ripping into Joe Biden about it. And the commentator said that there was three balloons spotted under the Trump administration, but he didn't do anything about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then Rubio was just quiet about it, like, oh, we, you know,
Yeah, but then to rebut that, they were also saying that General James Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis. Well, I don't consider him Mad Dog Mattis no more, more like Bitch Mattis. But
it was your boy.
yeah, yeah. But
Oh, how the mighty have
apparently,
fallen.
quote unquote, he knew about it, but he didn't trust the competence of Donald Trump at the time of him being president to handle the situation. So I guess he didn't say nothing to him.
Well,
I mean,
oh,
those are your generals right there, and then you have General Mark Milley that completely undermines, Trump at the time when he was president, saying that he was going to get China on the line or whatever, or he had already talked to China that if Trump was supposedly thinking about doing some sort of attack, that he would
good.
give them a heads up.
Yeah, that's part treasonous, but like I don't understand. Like throughout history, like it's kind of like Hitler all over again, where like you had like Trump, General Kelly and stuff. Like General Kelly was like, "Hey, stop surrounding yourself with yes men. I'm telling you right now, quit surrounding yourself with yes men." And then what did Trump do? Surrounded himself with yes men. I remember that comment that Trump made where he was just kind of like, I don't know, everything's fake nowadays and shit. But as soon as I heard this, I was like, oh yeah, that probably really happened. He goes, the generals in Germany during World War II were were really loyal. And then General Kelly's like, you do realize they tried to assassinate him like twice, and he's like,
Mhm.
what?
Yeah, they made movies about it.
Right, Valkyrie and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean. Like, but when I hear that kind of shit with Trump, where he's like, all he cares about is loyalty. It doesn't matter, like, oh, the Nazis were loyal to Hitler. It's like, dude, like, why do you expect that same shit? Like, I
Yeah,
don't get it.
yeah. I not to get off topic or anything, but I did finish watching The Wizard of Lies last night.
Yeah. Do you
And
like it?
yes, it is a pretty good movie. And Bernie Madoff is really fucked up for what he did. I mean, he
Right.
drove
A
his son to kill
sociopath.
himself.
Yeah.
But
What a complete sociopath. And
yeah.
did you pay attention to that part where he's like, "Oh, I got 400 million." He's like, "No, but I can do it for 500." You know what I
Well,
mean?
like, yeah, he's on the cusp of losing everything and being found out. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a couple months before he was found out, but
Hmm.
still, when he made that deal, when he was like, "Yeah, no, I don't, you know, if I did 100 million, I would have to, you know, kick one of my other investors out." And
Yeah.
he's like, "I can't do it. 200 million, can't do it. 300 million, can't do it."
I know. And he's like broken. He's on the phone with the
Yeah.
accountant, and he's like, "Dude, I just had to wire 100 million. We're gonna be exposed on Monday."
Yeah,
I know that.
that Picard guy was on to him though. That the one investor that he had, Picard. I
Yeah.
forget his name, but
Well,
he caught on to it.
that's just it. Like, you know, kind of getting off a topic right away, but at the same time, like the way that the whole system has become so fraudulent, the financial system has over the last shit 40, 50 years, like it's all fiat currencies and lowering of interest rates cyclically downward
Hmm.
and downward. It's essentially allows people to refinance on top of refinance on top of refinance on top of refinance. I mean, in the olden days, like Trump is a perfect example of that exploitation of lowering interest rates. uh the cops on the beat don't do shit, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
like the Securities Exchange Commission. uh
Yeah, they didn't do nothing about Bernie Madoff. Well,
no,
Bernie Madoff was like he he was like he
he
was like the
was,
top dog in Nasdaq and stuff.
yeah,
You
he
know.
was in charge of like the Nasdaq on the board of governors kind of
Yeah.
shit, and he
And
was
then
recommending
when
regulations and
everybody
deregulation.
else's when everybody else's stocks dropped and
Yeah.
his just either stayed the same or it kept rising,
Hmm.
they didn't even care to look.
No, but that's just it. Like there's a great movie you might want to check out called Gold with Matthew McConaughey.
Hmm.
Very underrated movie. He was a gold bug, and it was based on a true story where like Matthew McConaughey was a prospector, and his dad owned a gold mining company, and it went bust, and he took it over or some shit, and he was just a big giant alcoholic screw up. Well, he ended up going to like Indonesia and the Pyongyang or some shit like that, and he joined forces with another prospector who was like world famous for having this theory of like there's this big giant gold mine in Indonesia that nobody's found yet, but he was like a geologist and shit.
Hmm.
But the premise of it was it was all fraud. And this all took place I think in the 70s and 80s, where they built Goldman Sachs, I think it was, for like 400 million or some shit like that. But the thing was they would bring these gold samples right from Indonesia,
Yeah.
and they would send it to the top dog scientists.
Hmm.
The top dog scientists approve of it, but yet when the fraud finally was revealed, they would just take like little gold flakes and just like pour it into these samples and shit. Whereas like, right, whereas naturally, if it came from the ground in a stream, it would be rounded off gold, right, from all the
Yeah.
wear and tear of the water eroding on it.
Hmm.
But at the end of the movie, like the FBI is interviewing Matthew McConaughey, and he had no clue what was going on. That's how
Hmm.
good the fraud was. It was the other what do you call it? Uh,
Geologist.
yeah, geologist. He was behind it all, but like it was so simple to the fact that nobody wanted to look at what was really going on because kind of like similar to 2008, it was clear as day what was going on, but people were making too much money, so they don't want to they don't want to shit out the golden egg. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, Bernie was 15 or 16 years into that Ponzi scheme.
No, way more. He got busted in 2008. Sorry, 2008 December.
Hmm.
He started his business in the 70s, and they have no
Well, no,
records.
I thought he started his business in the 60s, and his wife
Yeah, even earlier, like the 60s.
and his wife ran like the books when he started out by himself.
Right, but she didn't at the same time didn't even know what a Ponzi scheme was.
No.
When he's like, "Oh, I'm running a Ponzi scheme," she's like,
Yeah,
"What's a Ponzi scheme?"
Ruth wasn't in the game that long, dog.
No, but what I'm saying is that there's no record of him really ever doing any trades.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, not a lot of people know this about Bernie because I absorbed and I try to read everything I could on it because I like that financial crap.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Bernie Madoff had a bunch of feeder funds feeding his own fund, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he's taking money in from investors while at the same time he was taking money in from drug cartels and stuff like that because his record was so immaculate, right?
Yes.
So he was doing all of his dealings and brokerages with JP Morgan Chase and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So JP Morgan took on all that fraud and knew it was going on, but they wanted fees. So
Yes.
JP Morgan was just as crooked as Bernie Madoff because they knew exactly what money was coming in, what money was
So
going on.
these fees were transaction fees.
Yep, exactly right. Because the way that the financial system works is they have something called custodian banks where
Mm-hmm.
they essentially hold your money and the stocks and they keep a record of it essentially. You're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
keep a record of your trades and they'll keep a record of it. But eventually, since the custodian banks deal with more clients, that all those trades and shit and money has to go through them, right?
Yes.
Same with like the drug deals and the cartels. They're all in cahoots with all the banks and stuff like that because they can't launder the money themselves, right?
So how did the drug cartels get into moving their money to Bernie Madoff? Like
Because he was taking
like
in the way that the Ponzi scheme worked, you got to keep taking in dumb money to pay off the old money. So he was like a sociopath. So he was just like, oh, I'll just rip off these cartels and shit. Not know he knew they were cartels, but at the same time, like he was such a sociopath that he thought he would be better and smarter than them.
so
Right?
did these drug dealers did they like come up with their own like alias
Shell
or something?
companies.
Yeah.
They would
Oh,
create
okay.
shell
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like speaking of shell companies. This is why the system is so fraudulent. Okay, so like there's a Asia's richest man. He's in
Hmm.
India. I think the name of the company is Adabi.
Okay.
ADAB. ADABI. Adabi. Okay, so he's a big giant conglomerate industrialist in Asia, but primarily India. Richest man in Asia, but he's the richest guy in India. Well, he just got busted in January last month that his whole company was a fraud. So he was worth like something like 150 million. He was right up there with like Mark Zuckerberg, top 20 in the world
Oh,
for
so like
billionaires.
150 billion.
Yeah,
I thought you
all
said million.
fraud.
Did you say million or
Billion with the
yeah,
B.
billion? Yeah, okay.
All fraud.
Yeah,
Okay.
wow. So
And the
he's
way that
worse than Bernie Madoff.
exactly right, because Bernie was
Bernie
about
was like
50
50 to 65 billion or something between
right
that
on
range.
the books, but
Hmm.
like most of those guys, they launder their money through the Cayman Islands and in the Caribbean, like St. James and stuff like that. Why do you think Epstein was in the Caribbean?
Because it
Right?
was all unregulated.
All unregulated. FTX was in the Caribbean. It's all
Hmm.
unregulated because there's such small countries. They don't get any investors except for money laundering.
Hmm.
Essentially, it's your only tourism there.
Yes.
So they have all the rich there and the tax incentives and stuff like that. But offshore accounts and stuff like that are primarily hidden in the Cayman Islands and different jurisdictions. But this Adobe guy who had the biggest company or was the richest guy in Asia, he was running a big giant fraud essentially. And the way
Hmm.
that he was found out was somebody looked through his financial statements on the company and said, okay, this little company is holding nothing but your stock. Who's the CEO of this company? And it was just like a bunch of fucking made up names. So
Hmm.
essentially, this big giant corporation in India created a bunch of shell companies that would funnel money to it illegally, probably, and then it would reverse and buy back that big giant company's stock. So it was like, you know what I mean? It's the same,
Yeah.
literally the same company buying the same company's stock.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't you just do stock buybacks? Well, that's too easy to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
But it really wasn't that easy to figure. I mean, it was easy to figure out because like a private research company, hedge funds do this all the time. That's like why financial world companies hate short sellers, companies
Mm-hmm.
that like deliberately try to like bankrupt you. GameStop, remember that?
Yeah, GameStop. Yes.
GameStop, AMC. On paper, or Hertz driving or rental.
Yeah. I
Right,
remember the
Hertz.
GameStop one though. The
Yeah.
GameStop one was huge, dog.
All those companies should be bankrupt essentially on paper because
But Robinhood came in and saved the day.
right. So like the Robinhood retail guys put a couple of hedge funds out of business because the hedge funds were like they have millions of dollars that they go into the financial statements and the balance sheets of these companies and prospectuses of these companies and bonds and stuff like that. Do their
Mm-hmm.
own individual research and start to nitpick at the numbers because the numbers don't lie. Well, on paper, like GameStop should be bankrupt essentially. It's just a dying fucking thing. Every time you go return a game, you only get $2 after you spent like $50
Mm-hmm.
on it, right? So it's just kind of like an insolvent business model.
And what was happening though that GameStop stock rose? What the bigger companies were pretty much picking on GameStop, and
Yeah,
then a lot of these other traders saw that and they got pissed, and
right.
then they pretty much bankrupted
Hedge
the
funds.
big hedge funds, yeah.
Right. And then essentially it was going up so bad and it was blowing up the system during that time in 2021 that the
Mm-hmm.
government and the Securities Exchange Commission came in and stopped trading to the retailers because they're like, you guys are going to bankrupt these hedge funds. Well, these hedge funds borrow money from big banks,
Well, actually,
right?
didn't Robin Hood come in first and stop it?
Robinhood, yep, Robinhood had to stop it because Robinhood is essentially owned by Citadel, which is essentially I would put like rank in hedge funds. Citadel is probably like number two, number three,
Hmm.
but Robinhood uses something called pay to go orders, I think they're called. Where essentially, let's say you wanted to buy stock on Robinhood, GameStop.
Hmm.
Okay, well, the speed of the trade is so fast that you buy the stock and then Robinhood takes your money and they go to Citadel and they say, hey, Ronnie's buying stock in GameStop
Yeah.
before you actually get it, right? So they're front running it and Citadel is paying for those orders so that they can speed trade on it. There's a good book called Flash Boys about it, where essentially
Does
it's
does Robinhood still do when you first sign up with Robinhood, do they still give you like that free $10 to throw
yeah,
down on a stock?
yeah, yeah, I think they still do.
Oh, okay.
But that was part of the fraud that like Robinhood essentially went insolvent like a year ago
Hmm.
because GameStop, right? They ran up the price of GameStop, bankrupting all these hedge funds, which would create a contagion. So then the government essentially came in and said, "Hey, Robinhood, you got to stop the trading." That's
Yeah.
like Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports. He was pissed because he's like, "Well, what the game is rigged then? Like, if you have like these 14 and 15-year-olds that can gang up and bankrupt a hedge fund, but yet the government comes in and says you can't do that. But when a hedge fund bankrupts the little guy, it's okay." Right.
Hmm.
So like Dave Portnoy was like really pissed about it because
Yeah, he was.
right, because he says like it's essentially rigged. Like you're holding back the retail investors. That's why what was it called? What was the website them all them guys were going on? Um
E-Trader?
no, not E-Trader. It's like Beat the Streets or some shit like that. We're all it's kind of like 4chan or whatnot, Reddit, where
Hmm.
everybody's going on the forum and coordinating like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy all this GameStop stock. And At the dog?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Pause it. Pause it, dog. Pause it.
Yeah, we'll put on I can't get over. Is that really what Adam Smith or what Sam Smith wrote or wore? Oh my god. What are they getting away with? First it's uh Little Nas X dressing up like the devil or dry humping the devil. Now it's Sam Smith dressed up like the devil. Whatever happened to the good old sunshine and rainbow kind of thing? Now it's like the devil and the rainbow, like the evil leprechaun. I'm the leprechaun. Don't try and steal me, devil.
Sorry, dog. Did you
No, I was
pause
just
recording at all?
no. Keep going. I was just geeking out about your background and stuff. I said first it's like Little Nas X dry humping the devil. Now it's Sam Smith dressed up like the devil, like a
Oh, and
goddamn
then yeah, Little Nas X had the blood shoes. The
yeah.
with the yeah with well, what was it? Yeah, like some like actual like human blood or something. And then they stopped doing stopped making the shoe.
Right. But what's up with Sam Smith looking like a little leprechaun and
Well,
shit?
I don't know if you're aware of this, but like I don't know. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. There was like a music video of him that came out, and it shows him like getting pissed on by like dudes. Like there's like dudes that are like laying on the ground with their legs up in the air, and then he's like walking between them, like looks like he's getting pissed on.
Whatever
I mean,
happened
if
to
you
like
wanted that done, he could have just had R. Kelly come in.
yeah. Whatever happened to like the good old days where like the gay people were just like just wanted to sing and shit, and be like
Well,
equal, like
it's
George Michaels and shit.
well, what I think the problem is now is that, a lot of movies and stuff used to be based on, they would have, a lot of symbolism.
Right,
And
we get it, dude.
I think now it's gotten to the point where they're like, screw the symbolism. We're just gonna go out there and show them
Yeah.
like this is the new culture.
We're
This is
taking
what's
over
not
this.
gonna get you. This is what's not gonna get you canceled. Okay, you
Yeah.
show your love for Satan. You let somebody pee in your face.
Yeah. It's
We
okay
will
because we're gay.
reward you. Next year, it's gonna be somebody taking a dump on somebody's chest.
Right. Like Team America and shit.
Yes, exactly.
I
Yeah.
just can't get over the world. I mean, like, I could never show my grandma this shit. It'll
I
kill my
can't,
gam gam.
dude. I can't get over looking at some of the pictures. I didn't watch the Grammys, but I
No,
couldn't
why
get
would
over
you?
watching like seeing these pictures on Twitter, and one of them was like Lizzo looking like she looked like a spike protein, like on the red carpet. Just ridiculous, dude.
I,
It's like you think these people like they think that's actual fashion. It's not. What is that? Kylie Jenner. She's got like a lion's face
yeah, big
like on
lion
her
head on
yeah, on
her
her
head.
dress. And then I saw this fashion show a couple days ago, and it shows like these ladies that they're wearing like these they're like they're I don't know, they're like brown tights, and then in front of the tights are the dresses, but they're not wearing them. They're like off
On the angle,
kilter. Yeah, they're on an angle in front of them.
it looks like
And
the
I'm like,
fingers.
what the hell is this? Yeah. So dumb.
I know, but like it's like Balenciaga where like they're walking in the mud and shit and they're wearing garbage bags. Like
Yeah.
that's the world we live in nowadays. But
Fucking
you know what?
gross.
Like this is all part of like a collapsing empire in the end, like ancient Rome, give them bread and circuses and keep them occupied because it keeps everybody occupied and tuned into the system.
You know what it
Which
reminds me of, dude? What's that futuristic movie with Bruce Willis and the
Fifth
chick?
Element. I've been
Yeah,
saying that for years.
Fifth Element,
You
Star
think the shit's
Wars.
crazy now. You wait. It's gonna be
Yeah,
like the Fifth
Fifth
Element.
Element,
Corbin, my man.
Star Wars, Star Trek, all those goofy looking characters in those movies. This is what reality is starting to turn into.
Ruby
And they're
Rod.
doing it so much that it's going to be acceptable like it is in the movies.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I've been
Just
saying on
absolutely insane.
my other podcast, The Waiting Room, I was saying that shit 5 years ago. I said, you think it's crazy now? It's gonna be like The Fifth Element and shit with like Rudy Rod, where it's like Flossed in Paradise. But dude, I'm telling you, we're like everybody's gonna be like that blue chick. Look at Sam Smith, just playing him blue, and he's like the opera singer chick, right?
Yeah,
With the
it's
stones in
crazy.
her.
Yeah, yeah. Just
It. I'm telling you, and that's all part of like a societal collapse where it it used to get this outrageous too, even in ancient Rome, where like that was just like a higher form of power structure, right? Where like the rich elite celebrities, ancient Rome used to adore chefs and stuff like that. Not even gladiators and stuff like that, but like ancient Rome, used to idolize chefs, artists, painters, and stuff like that. That was like their Sam Smith, their Kylie Jenner, the most beautiful people in ancient Rome were idolized and stuff like that. But then it was just like turned into this cesspool of just corruption and, sex and just shit like that, where it just ultimately crumbled.
did you see Madonna? Did you see a picture of Madonna from the Grammys
I
yesterday?
don't even want to, she probably looks like a foot. I don't even want to see it.
She looks like she just got back from Vegas doing a slap fight competition from Dana White's a slap fight thing.
Well, that's just it, dude. Like it's really, and you see how the system of, especially like LA,
Hmm.
how it just destroys people and how it just becomes like that eyes wide shut kind of party where it's just like it, and nobody really wants to accept the fact that this shit really goes on, but it's been going on for thousands of years.
Hmm.
There's always been higher societal elites that money is meaningless to them because they essentially run the money, right? Does that make sense? Where it's just kind of
Yes.
like everybody's just so integrated into this corrupt world that they no longer even think what they're doing is wrong. It's just,
Hmm.
if you're not in it, you're not part of the club kind of thing. Like even in ancient societies back then, you just had like it's all a power structure. I mean, like everybody knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing, same with Jeff Epstein, but like you just keep your mouth shut about it because you had to sell your soul in order to even get into that club, right?
Yep.
Like look at Kim Kardashian, perfect example, right? Don't Nobody knew her except they all knew her father, but yet she's world known for like making
Reggie
sex tapes
Bush.
and stuff. Yeah, Reggie Bush and stuff like that, and just not even doing anything towards society, but yet people idolize her as an entrepreneur, like Kylie Jenner and shit. Like
Hmm.
Kylie Jenner sells a product that's supposed to improve your beauty, but yet she's got all this cosmetic surgery and shit. But people don't want to look at it that way. They want to look at
Hmm.
her as being beautiful, but she's completely artificial, right?
Yeah.
There, but even I'm not religious or anything like that, but like it even says in the Bible, "Thou shalt not follow false idols," whether it's
Hmm.
celebrities or presidents or just anything in general where you're not supposed to follow Sam Smith, right? Who's idolizing the devil. Now, if you really care more about the music than you do about making uh, a statement, just knock that shit off. We get the point, right? You
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
good music.
Just sing the goddamn song.
Yeah, you make the good music, but why do you have to go into this alternative thing where you're it's not necessarily like fuck you to the system that they're thinking about, but it's just I think they've just become so ingrained and intertwined in it that they really believe like that's okay, right? Like
Well, they feel like that it's gotten to a point now in our society, you know, with with all these people being under a psyop and being brainwashed, they're getting more and more open with
center
all
stage
this.
a little bit on your screen. I don't want to keep looking at
Oh,
at this
okay. All right.
red leprechaun
All
shit.
right. Yeah. I'll give myself the devil pointers.
I like your bangs.
Yeah, thanks, dog. But anyways, I think that, as society has gone on and has changed, a lot. I think that this satanic, ritualistic ideology has become, you know, more flamboyant, more public
And the more they shove it
as
at you, the
it's
more
gotten
acceptable it should
crazier.
be. Huh?
You know, it's you got the dudes that want to be chicks and drag queen story time. And
Yeah, but
do you remember back when we were kids, if there was a guy that dressed up as a chick and went to our school and read, what do you think the hell would happen?
I
Teachers would
just
jump. Teachers would be jumping on that dude, beating the shit out of him.
right, but that's just part of like a societal destruction of acceptance, right? Like, and this is where the politicians, the media tried to exile you for speaking against this bullshit, right?
It's
You
because
don't even have to be
we
a
coddle the people that need help.
exactly right because in the 50s and 60s we used to throw them fucking nut wackos in a sane asylum, but then the liberals were like, that's too mean, so let's just let everybody out, right?
Do you remember? Do you remember growing up when there was like, with girls there was like the tomboy phase? Like
Hmm.
they hung out with the boys, they
Yeah,
played football, baseball with the boys, but eventually, they they grew out of it,
they
or they
feminized.
didn't, and they were just gay.
Yeah,
It's not like that anymore. It's like, well, I've been hanging out with the boys a lot, and I like doing boy things, so I think I'm gonna cut my tits off and try to get a dick
right, and that's just it.
and fit in with the boys.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's not right, dude.
I mean, this is one of the things where I've been saying for like the last 5 years when I was telling all my friends and like every chance I got, I was like, dude, like the system's collapsing and shit. Not necessarily on a financial wise, but just societal decay. I could see what was going on.
Yes.
Where the minute you wouldn't want to accept that and you had to like stick up for your own individual rights, where you're like, no, that's fucking sick and that's wrong. And you could see the herd or the system turn against you and be like, you're part of the problem. You're not accepting it. And it's like, I don't need to fucking accept it. I think it's wrong. Get the fuck away from me. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I mean, this is why during COVID and stuff, during 2020, during the height of it, this is why everybody started going batshit crazy. And the NBA, they tried to restart all the sports before they even opened anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
To keep everybody in mass psychosis again. Oh, don't worry about running out of toilet paper. The NBA is playing in the bubble and everybody's got to be vaccinated.
Oh, just a reminder. I just want to let you know. Do you know who was the sponsor at the Grammys yesterday?
Sunny Delight.
Pfizer.
Yeah.
So let's have a satanic ritual, sponsored by the people that have been injecting you with this mRNA vaccine that's supposed to help you.
Right. But that's
God,
just
dude, I
it.
hope
Like,
we don't get banned.
well, I don't think we will, but at the same time, we'll get red flagged or some shit like that, and then the FBI will show up and they'll be like, you got to shut this shit down. And it's like, why are you shutting me
Yeah,
down? You couldn't shut
why?
that fucking balloon down.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is where I mean, like, this is where the system tries to cocoon itself and destroy anything that is going against the agenda. And the current agenda is societal decay by the World Economic Forum, and just not even that, just the whole financial system's falling apart right now. That's
That
why,
and the whole climate crisis.
right,
The climate crisis.
right. I mean,
Don't get
I
me
had
wrong.
a,
Yeah, there is climate change, but
it's called the
um,
seasons.
yes. But this whole thing with what Bill Gates wants to do with, like, trying to stop cows from farting, or eliminating eliminating the ability of us to eat meat, or to eat genetically modified beef.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just all
plant.
crazy, dude. That's not how we were made to
No,
live.
because And that's
or
why they're
eat
trying to make
bugs.
everybody poor, right? They're trying to make everybody poor. They're trying to take away everybody's overtime. They're taking away your health benefits. You can't even afford fucking healthcare anymore. I just saw his TikTok video, right? I'm talking
Hmm.
about ripping on China, but here I am referencing TikTok and shit. I saw this TikTok video of a guy who said, "You want to know how screwed up the healthcare system is?" He cut his finger or some shit like that, and he had to go in and get 5 stitches on his finger, right?
Hmm.
5 stitches. Before his insurance kicked in, it was $3,800 for 5 stitches on his finger.
Mm.
So he said, okay, after insurance, I think it came out to be $1,800. Okay. So they knocked off 2 grand. Wow.
That's still a lot of fucking money, dude.
Exactly. For 5 stitches. So then he goes to the urgent care, and the urgent care, he makes an appointment with urgent care. Hey, I need to get my stitches out and stuff like that. They're like, okay, come on in. He goes to the urgent care, right? Urgent care, you should be able to take out 5 stitches. Oh no,
Yeah.
you can't be here. You have to go to the hospital that put him in. So then he goes to the hospital, get his stitches taken out. It was going to charge him like another $1,800 to get his stitches taken out. And he goes, you know what? I think I'm just going to go to Walgreens and take them out, get some sutures and take it out myself, right?
Yeah.
And the lady goes, yeah, I don't blame you. Like, that's ridiculous. So the lady clerk took him out of the system because every time you go there and they put your name into the system and stuff like that and start taking, they charging your ass.
Hmm.
As soon as you walk through that fucking sliding whoop-de-doo door and shit, you're getting charged.
Yep.
Either you're dying or you're getting charged.
Hmm.
And she was like, you know what? I'm going to take you out of the system, but he'll tell you what, don't tell nobody this. She gave him like a little medical kit with the sutures and the little scissors. And she's like, here you go. Like, that's how fucked up the system is. It's nothing is going right to a point where like the Patriot Act, there ain't one fucking thing patriotic about it.
No.
The Affordable Health Care Act, it's even more unaffordable, right? Every single time there's a crisis and they come out with this stupid new child care protective or PPP loan shit, it just exacerbates the fucking problem.
We
It
don't
just
need
makes it way worse.
we don't need the Patriot Act no more.
Right, but
That's long overdue.
right, but Milton Friedman, famous economist, he said there's no such thing as a temporary government program. All they ever do is they just say, "Oh, this is going to be temporary." It's never temporary. The government just keeps growing and growing and growing. But now that the government is such integrated into the system, it is the system,
Hmm.
right? Like you got to remember, like 70% of the GDP is government,
Hmm.
military spending, healthcare, education, right? Like,
Social Security,
yeah,
Medicaid,
all of that shit. Whereas the remaining small percentage is just people, Americans going into debt that they
capitalism.
can't. Yeah, they're just buying stupid shit with money they don't have.
Hmm.
That's the remaining like 30%.
That's the way the government wants it to be, though. They want people to be dependent upon them so they can have more control over them.
Right, because a docile, um, well, how do I put it? A population that is struggling is a docile and controllable, right? I
Hmm.
mean, that's why the Nazis would starve the fucking Jews in Auschwitz and shit so they couldn't escape.
Hmm.
They just started beating the shit out of each other and just kind of like it was just a means of control. Like,
Or it's like throwing somebody in a little room with heavy metal blasting
yeah,
until
sleep
you,
deprivation.
yeah, pretty much until you beg them to stop. You
Yeah.
give them what they want.
Mm-hmm. And that's just it. It's just a alternative means of control. But at the same time, like their justification of it is like, oh, we're saving people by killing people kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where I call it like that George instead of George what the hell is this? Who's the who's the guy who's like on the big conspiracy thing?
Alex Jones?
No, I always called them not Thanos.
Who are
Uh,
you talking about,
the
dude?
hedge fund guy that all the Trump supporters say that, he's behind all the Democratic crap.
George Soros.
Yeah, George Soros. I always called
He
him
is
George
behind all the
Santa.
Democratic stuff, dude. He's the
Right.
highest. He funds the Democrats the most amount of money. Behind him was that FTX.
Right. And I always said his name is George Thanos.
Yeah, George.
because that's because like I watched a bunch of interviews of him like back in the 80s and 90s because he's a great investor and stuff like that. I've even read a couple of his books, financial books. And from my understanding, I think he was a Hungarian Jew.
Yes.
And from my understanding of him, psychological wise, is that he kind of really does think like Thanos. Like he he is evil, but at the same time, he doesn't perceive him. He perceives himself as being kind of like a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
Where you ever seen the movie Swordfish with John
Yes.
Travolta?
Yeah, and Halle Berry.
Yep, Halle
Yeah.
Berry and stuff. There's a good scene in that movie where,
Yes, there is.
yeah, with the booby shot. But
Yeah, now.
there's a scene in that movie where John Travolta is kind of explaining to Hugh Jackman, the hacker, of like the underground CIA and how like the way to stop terrorism is by being even more tyrannical and create even more terror
Mm-hmm.
to control it, right? Like he said, like they bomb an airplane, we bomb an airport. Escalation essentially in order to control it. That's kind of like how George Soros
Soros.
sees it as, where like he has to influence all of these political parties in order to control the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all greedy and they're all corrupt. And the only way that the system works political wise is through donations, right? So that's kind of where like ultimately the whole system just becomes so corrupt. People, the populace, the average everyday American realizes it doesn't even matter who you vote for.
No, it doesn't.
Right. So who has bigger influence? Goldman Sachs or your one fucking vote?
Larry Fink.
Larry Fink, exactly. I read a whole book on him and stuff like that at First Boston National Bank in Boston. He was
His
one of
his firm's pretty much going to be rebuilding Ukraine once this war is all done.
right, because essentially he's a different arm of the government.
Mm-hmm.
Where essentially like if you were to look at there's BlackRock and Blackstone. If you were to look at BlackRock, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before off screen, but like BlackRock has something that is called the Aladdin. Aladdin is an artificial intelligence that Larry Fink created back in the late 80s,
Mm-hmm.
90s. I think it was like late 80s, early 90s, where he created this artificial intelligence back then, even early on, created it called Aladdin. And Aladdin is essentially the broker of the world, but it's artificial intelligence. It knows when to buy stocks, when to sell stocks, when to buy this, because it consumes so much
So it's
information.
the Chat GPT of stocks.
Exactly right. That's yep, it's a very good comparison. It's like what was the guy's name in Power Rangers with the fucking face Zorg or whatever? And they had that little robot. Ay, 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 ay. Right. Yeah, that's essentially what Aladdin is. Aladdin
Mhm.
is like that Zorg dude with the crystal face and shit, the
Yeah,
fat ass.
yeah.
That's what it is. It essentially tells the Power Rangers which bad guys are coming to Earth and stuff like that. Because for the longest time during the financial crisis, they locked all the big CEOs in a room and said, "You're getting this money, you're getting this amount of money, you're getting this amount of money, Wells Fargo, you're getting 25 billion." And for the longest time, all the research that I've ever done, I'm like, well, how did they figure out how to do all that? Like, how do you know, according to assets, who gets what money and how much they get, right? It's a crisis. You know how long it would take to figure out how much crap you have on your books?
Well, it was pretty obvious how they got all the money during the COVID crisis
Right.
because they made all the small businesses shut down
Mhm.
and then they made everybody, you know,
Pile into Walmart.
yeah, pile in a Walmart, pile in a Target, all the
Mhm.
big box stores. They even went to the
Costco.
White House and said, we're working together to stay open so that we can be there to take care of you and your needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
they
when it
used
came to the
Aladdin to
small
do all that.
businesses, you guys got to get screwed. You guys
Yeah.
are getting shut down.
The
We're
Federal
taking all your
Reserve,
money.
okay, Apple is the richest company in the world, Apple is. So why was the Federal Reserve, aka it wasn't the Federal Reserve really, but it really was. It was BlackRock.
Mm-hmm.
BlackRock was buying bonds in the name of the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve gives a company money, and then that company buys stock up in the name of the Federal Reserve. Like that's just another arm of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially what was going on during COVID. They were buying up. Why does the richest company in
Geez,
the
that
world?
almost sounds like something that Bernie Madoff did with drug dealers.
Right, right.
Hmm.
So you're taking money to buy stuff to cover it up.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's a mandate in the Federal Reserve's code of ethics or whatnot. Like Congress wrote in there, where like before World War One, you couldn't the Federal Reserve, there was some sort of mandate where like the Federal Reserve couldn't buy treasuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't want a central bank funding a corrupt government. That's
Yeah.
why we're on the gold standard.
So I have a question.
Shoot.
We talk a lot about bailouts. Now I'm starting to hear
Bail-ins.
the opposite. Yes, bail-ins.
Yeah.
So we are going to have money stolen from our accounts in order
It,
to fund the Federal Reserve.
no, not to fund the Federal Reserve, but to fund the debt that America has accrued, that the money that we got from the Federal Reserve.
Isn't that what taxes are for?
Correct, but the government spends more than it takes in. So for every dollar the government takes in, okay, for every
Mm-hmm.
dollar that the government takes in tax revenue, it spends $1.60.
Mm.
So that's why it just keeps running in twin deficits, it's called, where it's a federal budget deficit and it's a trade deficit. Like
Yeah.
that's a trade deficit is essentially other countries buying America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't produce shit here in the last 50 years because we completely hollowed out our internals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we did all that for the cheaper globalism, and then the system goes bust, right?
Yes.
Well, those debts are always need to be paid. And the way that the system has worked throughout history, World War One, World War Two, is we owe a shit ton of money, we say fuck you, and then we go to war. And
Mm-hmm.
winner takes all. And that's essentially why when Trump became president, I was warning everybody because I was paying attention to the treasury market. China and Russia were dumping trillions of dollars of treasuries and shit. China used to be number one holder of American debt. As soon as Trump became president, they started dumping it all because they know he doesn't pay his fucking bills ever, right? Why would you trust him?
Russia knew something was up because when Trump was in office, Trump knew something was going on in Ukraine that should not have been going on.
Right,
And
because
that was the
essentially,
funding of 46 biolabs.
yeah.
And if you were a nation that had 46 biolabs right on your border, how would you feel? If you were,
Hmm.
and I'm not a Putin sympathizer, but
No.
I'm saying if the United States, being where we are right now, and Mexico had 46 biolabs funded by Russia, what do you think the US would do? Do you think we would just, stand still and not do nothing like we pretty much did until the last second with the Chinese balloon?
No.
No.
So it's
I think there'd
intentional.
be an all-out invasion. It would be another war.
Right, it's intentional, but that's the purpose of Ukraine. It's a laundromat for the Middle East. Like I said, like the Baltic area doesn't produce shit. That's why America is everywhere. Why do you think, like I've said this before, I think on one of the other previous podcasts, is like that's why Putin took out Crimea, because Crimea is like the utility center of Ukraine. It's right there on the Baltic Sea, I think. Or is it the Black Sea? I think it's the Black Sea. In the Black Sea, strategic wise, if you can control the Black Sea, you literally can control the whole entire Mediterranean area. You can control
Mm-hmm.
Central Europe just from that one sea, right? The Black Sea, because it leads into the Mediterranean. So that was one of the very first things that Putin did was he took out Crimea and he
Yeah.
cyber attacked Ukrainian banks.
Mm-hmm.
So when he locked that shit down by cyber attacking it, all the crooked politicians couldn't get their fucking money out. Why do
Mm-hmm.
you think they're so hell bent on trying to save Ukraine? They could give two shits about Ukraine. Why would you try to like save Chernobyl and shit?
I just
No,
saw something today on Twitter about how many Ukrainian soldiers have been lost. I think they're like up to like 150,000 Ukrainian soldiers are dead.
yeah, but they keep saying like Russia's losing, but that's just a propaganda machine.
Yeah, it's insane, dog. And then I was listening on the radio this morning, and British Petroleum,
Mm-hmm.
I
BP.
think that yeah, they had a profit of about $42 billion
Mm-hmm.
in fiscal year 2022.
Right.
Just imagine, if we were back to being independent in energy and how much money we could save in that sector.
Well, that's just it, though. It's really not the fact that we were so energy independent. It's the fact that we were running and firing on all cylinders, but all cylinders, a lot of that was fracking. Fracking only works so long as the interest rates are low.
Where did they get the sand from fracking, dog?
Well, it's
That's a fun fact. Where do they get it from, dog? Come on.
Saudi Arabia. I don't fucking know.
They get
Canada.
it they get it from northern Wisconsin, dog.
Oh yeah, huh.
Yeah. Northern Wisconsin, I think the UP, yeah.
Well, my understanding of fracking, because I mostly know the financial side of fracking, but like
Hmm.
fracking is where they use high pressure water to like to break through the sand or some shit like that. To like, how does fracking actually work? It's to
Um,
squeeze out the oil out of the rocks and the rock plates, right?
it's like the fracturing of like rock or something. Here, I'll look it up.
Right.
I'll look it up, dog.
But yeah, the whole entire Trump was saying we're energy independent. That is true, but that should only work so long as the interest rates were low because fracking is like cold fusion. It doesn't work. Like you
Okay.
have to put more energy into it than you actually get out. That's the premise of like fracking and shit. It doesn't work so long as you keep dumping and useless energy into it, but you get very little out of it.
The process of fracking is injecting liquid at a high pressure into subterranean rocks, boreholes, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
so as to force open existing fissures and extract oil or gas.
Okay. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it
But
sounds
that's why, like,
painful.
so when you see people who are all for fracking, those very same people wouldn't drink the fucking water from in the river from that
No.
fracking. You ever see those videos of like you have the councilman and you have like the middle class farmer and he's like, "Here, drink this water." If fracking is so good, it's kind of like how
Um,
pig farmers are, right? Pig farmers got to
mhm.
do something with all that shit. So what do? They put it in a big giant piss pool and
There's
it's right next to the river.
what is that, like Gasland or something like that, where it's got these people like their tap water. It's like they put like a
Flame
lighter
to it?
right up to their faucet.
Yeah.
They got methane coming out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fracking. So like any supporter of fracking, drink up. But that's just it. Like, so people want to blame the Keystone Pipeline. I used to work for a company that used to do like sub work for the Keystone Pipeline. And that's been going on for like the last 10 years was a Keystone Pipeline. But like you hear these people that are like, Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline. I'm like, the amount of money we printed wouldn't make a dick difference
Hmm.
in the amount of oil we would make. Like it's uncomprehendable for some people to just admit that. Like, and I always explain to people like When you go to the gas station, do you pay your gas in like Pokemon cards and shit? No, you pay in dollars.
Yeah.
So the more and more dollars that they print, the more and more you need now to get that same equivalent of gas, right? Or
Yeah.
oil. And the average American doesn't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But back to your whole entire thing on bail-ins, here's a scary fact. Okay, so after the 2008 financial crisis, there was a thing called Dodd-Frank, which essentially put regulations on the big banks. No more leveraging yourself up 40 to 1 and shit like that, like Lehman Brothers. It put restrictions on it. Well, as soon as Trump got into office, he started deregulating that. That's why I knew right away like what he was trying to do. Now a lot of people know that. Before he got the tax cuts in, he was deregulating Dodd-Frank. Oh, the times have changed. You know, the banks learned their lesson. Where does Trump get all of his money from? Banks, right?
Yeah.
So back to the bail-ins. In that piece of legislation, Dodd-Frank, they put a clause in there that essentially the next time that there'd be a financial crisis, we would need to print so much money that essentially we create
It's going to
hyper.
be in the coming days, dog, or the coming weeks, because the Gold Telegraph here says that the CEO of Bank America says they are preparing for a possible United States debt default. This is the second largest bank in the United States. The circus is coming to town.
Right. Because essentially the system is bust. The banking system has been insolvent ever since the 1970s. The 1970s, well, during the 60s and 70s, America loaned out millions or trillions of dollars of loans to South America, Brazil, Mexico, and shit like that. And then when they started raising interest rates at the end of the 70s, all that shit went bust. So America didn't get paid back.
Yeah.
So we had to call the IMF, right?
Mm-hmm.
International Monetary Fund, to come and bail us all out. So that's kind of like where you saw like the savings and loan crisis and stuff like that by raising of interest rates. So it's kind of like when I explained to like my ex-girlfriends about like what's really going on and shit, because they don't have no fucking clue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Biden needs to pay off my student loan debt. That's about all of finance they know and shit. And Amazon. I need more Amazon and Target. But I try to explain them how the financial system works. So like when interest rates go down, it's like musical chairs. The banks give out more chairs for everybody to sit down on, right? Well, the music keeps playing, keeps playing, keeps playing. Everybody's going around in a circle, right? Exchanging money in a circle. The minute they start to raise interest rates, they start pulling chairs away. But the music's still going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before you know it, you have 10 people and 2 chairs. Then all of a sudden the music stops. Now what happens? Everybody
Nothing,
kills
dog. You're
everybody.
screwed.
Right.
War.
Right. The whole shit hits the fan. So back to a bank bail-in, what that is that is where the banks, aka you're a depositor, everybody's a depositor. That's where essentially the bank has the right to take your deposits and use it to refinance their balance sheet on shitty loans that they made. Have you ever seen what is it? It's a Wonderful Life, I think it's called, the old black and white movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not A Miracle on 34th Street or Bullshit Street, whatever it is, but it's called A Wonderful Life. And you know, it takes
Is that
place
the
during the
concentration camp one?
No, is that A Wonderful Life? I
Is
think
it?
that's A Beautiful Life.
Are you sure?
I know which one you're talking about with the Italian guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's an old school one made in like the 30s or 40s, black and white, where it takes place during a bank run.
Wow, dude, check this out. Visa is offering. This is from Big Bird on Twitter. The war on cash intensifies. Visa offers restaurants $10,000 to go cashless.
Mm-hmm. See,
My goodness.
Me being the conspiracy theorist that I am, I said, well, the government using and trying to get rid of cash because cash is non-traceable, really. but
Mhm.
it's only traceable so long as you injected it back into the system. That's why it has like coding numbers on it.
Mhm.
Well, in order to deposit that money and shit, it's got to go through the bank. Then the bank runs those serial numbers, right?
Mhm.
But if you and me interchange money, cash, say for a car under the table, let's say I do a job for you and you need to pay me cash. The
Mhm.
government don't fucking know anything about that, right?
Yeah.
Well, the government being the all-seeing, all-doing bigger brother wants to know where all that cash is going. Okay? So it's like, here's a stat. The FDIC only has $125 billion. Okay?
Mhm.
So the FDIC takes over bad banks when they go bust. Now, you're insured up to $250,000 on your deposit.
Mhm.
It used to be 100 or 150, I think, before the financial crisis, but they had to like calm everybody down and be like, your money's safe. Don't pull your money out of the bank.
Yeah.
So they raised it like $100,000 or some shit like that. So the FDIC has 125 billion.
Mhm.
They have to oversee 7 to 9 trillion in deposits.
Yeah.
Okay. So like this is where you might even want to look this up. There was a recent FDIC secret meeting where they were talking about bank bail-ins and shit like that. It's on Twitter and stuff like that where they were talking about like we literally can't come out and say to the American people that there's a problem. Your money's safe because otherwise it'll create a panic. That's why during COVID they did something similar where there was bank runs going on. I pulled out a shit ton of money out of my banks in January, I think. January, early February,
Mhm.
because I could see what was going on in the bond market, the repo market, which is like a pawn shop for big banks and hedge funds. Something like $4 or $5 trillion is swapped back and forth overnight in this market, where it's just a 1 to 2 day kind of like loan. It's essentially how the whole entire financial system, every company, major company finances itself through there, right?
Mhm.
Just like a bank. You go to a bank, hey, I want all my money. And if you got like 10 million, they're like, we don't have that. And it's like, well, what do you mean you don't have my money? Oh, well, we need more time and you need to let us know, like, we'll give it to you in like a week. No, I
Yeah.
want all my money. No bank has any money in there. That's why like anytime you pull out less than like or more than $10,000, or if you deposit more than 10,000, you're getting flagged.
Mhm.
So in like January of 2020, I called up my bank. I could see what was going on in the financial market, and like, and this is typical of like the American people. They really don't understand what's kind of going on. They just kind of like get this bad feeling. So I called up my bank and I said, "Hey, I'm so and so. I have a checking account. I want this amount of money. I want like $2,010, $2,020,
Mhm.
$2,050, 2,000 and $100. I'll be there at 3. We can't get you there. I said I'll be there at 3, or I'm closing my whole entire account, and you still got to give me the fucking money,
Yeah.
right? So I threatened them with closing my account. Well, nobody wants that done, so okay, yeah, we'll have your money by then. So I work in a factory and shit like that, so I'm all dirty, and I come in with my backpack,
Yeah.
and I come up to my backpack, and I'm all dirty and shit, and they're kind of like they're looking at me like, "What do you got all this money and you look like a fucking bum, you know?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, just shooting the shit with the two ladies, the two tellers," and they're like, "Oh, it's kind of a lot of money, What do you got something planned expensive for the weekend?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to Las Vegas for a bachelor party."
Mhm.
Right? But I wasn't, because I knew. Why are you asking me? Give me my fucking money.
Mhm.
Do I ask you, when you kissed your husband goodbye, or no? Leave me alone. Give me my fucking money.
Mhm.
So I did that, and over the course of the next week and during the pandemic, you had these bank runs and shit where people were like, if the virus is killing all these, shit's hitting the fan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's a guy who's a Federal Reserve president in Minnesota Federal Reserve. I think Neil Kashkari, his name is. Neil Kashkari was a underling of Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary during the financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
He went online, or like how PBS always does those fucking documentaries.
Yeah.
He came out with something similar where he runs the Federal Reserve of Minnesota Bank, and he said that he had a client, a big whale, call him and say, "Hey, I want $10 million cash, and I'll be there, within the hour," or something like that. So you had all these people during the pandemic pulling their money out of the banks. There was a run on all the banks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have to shut the system down from you getting out all your money. And I knew that the government, which was right, as all of us conspiracy theories say, they're trying to get rid of cash. They're trying to get rid of cash because they want to track everything.
Yeah.
Well, what better reason would that be for, oh, the virus is on cash. You can't use it no more because it's transmitting the virus hand to hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why most companies no cash accepted except for small businesses.
Yeah.
Well, small businesses primarily deal with cash,
Mm-hmm.
waitresses and shit like that. I mean, I was just at George Webb's. Now they have an Apple iPay. Oh,
Dude,
how
forget
much?
George Webb's, dude. They don't give you enough food for how much they charge, dude.
Well,
No
that's just it.
way. No
Well, that's
way.
just it.
That I miss Johnny V's, dog. Johnny
Yeah.
V's. But I got some news here to go through. This is from Unusual Wales at Unusual Wales at unusual underscore Wales on Twitter. It says President Biden will call for quadrupling the levy on corporate stock buybacks and renew
Mhm.
his calls for a minimum tax on billionaires in his State of the Union speech, per Bloomberg.
Right. So
Um,
essentially, they're trying to lock the system down, and they're trying to keep capital from fleeing, right?
mhm.
Because essentially, when capital leaves out of a country, it creates a financial crisis. That's what they're trying to prevent. They've been trying to prevent that for the last 3 years. That's why the shit just keeps getting nuttier and nuttier and nuttier. Because this is why I said before, in the last podcast, how bad it's gonna get. Do you have Amazon Prime?
I certainly do.
Okay, go on Amazon Prime to the movie section and type this in: Dragon Day. Okay, the movie's called Dragon Day. It's like a low budget shit movie. It was probably made like 2014 or 15. But this is kind of where I was getting at on the last podcast. Like when you asked me how bad is it going to get, it's essentially going to be like that movie.
Oh, it's for free.
Yeah, it's for free.
Mhm.
Now, Dragon Day, the premise of it is a China cyber attack,
Mhm.
right? Where over the last 50 to 60 years, every single electronic is made in China, right?
Mhm.
Or Korea. But essentially, China realized that Americans are fucking stupid and we love our electronics. So they created a kill switch in everything, all the semiconductors and stuff like that. Every single electronic has a kill switch in it because it's got to be hooked up, right? Electronic in it.
Oh, this is breaking right here from Unusual Wales at unusual underscore Wales. Bed Bath and Beyond has secured investor backing for more than $1 billion in capital raises stave off bankruptcy, per Wall
Yeah,
Street
but that
Journal.
really won't. It really won't help. Um, there's a big place called Blackstone, not Black Rock. I don't know who
Mm-hmm.
the hell comes up with these names. It's the same fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
Black Rock, Blackstone. Um, Blackstone had a commercial real estate like Bed Bath Beyond and shit. That's like commercial, right? Office building
Mm-hmm.
shit. Well, since COVID shut down and everybody was working from home, all those loans went bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not paying your landlord for your commercial office space, like, what's the point of it? You don't need all the commercial office space. Everybody's working from home, right? So it's just dead money. You're not
Mm-hmm.
making any money on it. Well, Blackstone had this REIT, which is a real estate investment trust, if I remember correctly,
Okay.
which pays you in dividends because that's one of the stipulations of investing in REITs. They have to pay out like, I think it's 99% of the income in
Mm-hmm.
dividends, so they don't have to pay a tax, no income tax or something like that. That's one of the
Yeah.
stipulations. Well, one of those just went bust from Blackstone, and it was a private equity one, which means it's big, giant money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rich, elite people
Mm-hmm.
were buying this commercial REIT. So the real estate investors started pulling their money out of this REIT. I forget how many billions of dollars it was, but there was a run on this REIT. Essentially, people were pulling their money out of this fund, right? And this happened last, I think, in November,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can kind of see these dominoes are starting to tip over now. FTX, this other big company, Blackstone, was having a run on one of their REITs. Well, they had to go to the University of Southern California, USC, I think it was. And USC had to inject like $1 billion into it, or $2 billion to keep it solvent, right?
Yeah.
Because it would create a contagion. So this is where, like, in 2021, the biggest Chinese real estate company in the fucking world was
Mm-hmm.
going bankrupt from all the fraud because they were raising interest rates. I think it was called Evergrande. Evergrande was worth like something like $300 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a real estate company in China. Go to China, they've been building everything for the last 10 years, but there's nobody in these cities and stuff. They're called ghost cities.
Yeah.
So the government of China just keeps like owns everything. So they give this money to real estate companies and say, "Hey, build, 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 build." Because I think essentially they want to take all the farm and peasant people out of the countryside and bring them
Mm-hmm.
into the cities to work.
Yeah.
So the government was kind of like financing this company Evergrande. Well, they were starting to go bust. Now all of a sudden you have the world's richest guy in Asia, the Indian guy, his company, which is like 150 billion or something, it's going bust,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can see this contagion in the financial world is picking up speed now. And this is where I say, like, I bring up that movie Dragon Day, where like you're gonna start to see a cyber attack that's even bigger than the pandemic. But is it really China, or is it just the American government using it as a false flag to try to take over even more control? What's essentially left of the whole entire system that COVID didn't wipe out or fuck up or bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
Because now they have to switch the system over to a completely digitalized system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's why, like, when I was explaining because I was telling people about Bitcoin years ago and shit like that, but like trying to explain it to baby boomers, it's like trying to explain the email and shit. Like, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
call, you can just email.
Yeah.
you know,
So is tomorrow the State of the Union address?
who gives a shit?
Well, I figured if it's tomorrow, we could cover it while we record tomorrow.
Yeah, we could almost shoot a live one if you want.
I mean, we don't have to go live yet, but I mean, we could just record it and then, put it out for like the next day. But I got a few other stories here to talk about, and then we could pretty much wrap it up, dog.
Yeah.
We're already about
What
an
else you
hour
got?
21 in. It's well, they are going to be putting up the barricades back up around the Capitol tomorrow for the State of the Union address. We
Like,
talked
that is
about
some
this.
straight up like Orwellian shit.
Yeah. We
It's like
talked about this. We talked about this one earlier, that there is a rare 3.8 magnitude earthquake that struck upstate New York.
yeah, which is odd to me because the one in Turkey and Syria, happen in two countries instead of one, which is odd. I've never heard of that before, unless it's right on the border.
Yeah.
But if it's right on the border, there's bodies of water really close, which kind of reminds me of like a thermal fissure and stuff like that. But it's kind of odd now that everything is starting to have earthquakes now, right?
Yep.
And this is where I say, like, I'm not saying that necessarily these earthquakes are man-made or intentional. I'm kind of saying, like, this is where it's like, it's getting to that point where
Yeah.
something so little can create a ripple effect, not like, not the equivalent of George Floyd or anything like that, but just 10 times bigger, right?
Yep.
And then the government will try to swoop in and be hero and say, we all need to come together as a country, kind of like how 9/11 was and shit, a cataclysmic event that they try to misdirect everybody about what really was going on, right? Like Donald Rumsfeld came out and said, oh, the Pentagon lost $3 trillion or whatnot the day before 9/11.
Yeah.
No. And then the Pentagon gets hit right where the accounting is. You know what I mean?
Did you hear about the giant fire in Chicago today? It's a giant warehouse fire in
Is that the
Chicago.
one that's derailed or whatnot? I thought that was Ohio.
No, there was a big warehouse fire in Chicago today.
What's in the warehouse?
I have no idea.
I bet it would be.
I didn't dive that far into it, but it looked. I seen a picture of it. It's pretty big, dog.
Well, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, wasn't there a warehouse fire in an evidence warehouse where like some people speculated that's where like Ghislaine Maxwell had like evidence and shit like that on Epstein?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they still have stuff like that. I'm sure it's in Utah where the NSA stuff is, where
Right.
all where they have all their files. What else was there? Oh yeah, Kevin McCarthy is going to release all the footage from January 6th.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what, I mean, you're just going to see what, you know,
Can we
what
have the My
surveillance
Pillow guy
cameras
narrate
caught.
it? Can we have the My Pillow guy narrate it? Okay, so this is where what's his name from South America? Hugo Chavez comes in and shoots her. Yeah. I really don't understand why we're still like, this is kind of like the downfall of man, where not necessarily man, but it's called the fourth turning, where I kind of explained this shit to your brother one time. He thought I was a fucking nut whack job, but I was like, dude, like this always happens throughout history, like of empires, right?
Yeah.
And I try to, when I'm at the bar and I'm all fucked up and I'm hearing people like debate shit outside, I'm like, it's the fourth turning. They're like, what's that? And I said, okay, well, to put it simply, fourth, the first stage of an empire, individuals come together and create a group. And then that group starts to build great monuments and symbols, libraries, universities, right? Things that the group can educate themselves in knowledge, which will propel the empire. The second stage is that, those symbols, universities and libraries are complete and they start to gain that knowledge and you really start to see it in the empire grow, right? By the third stage, the corruption starts to set in, because now the empire has become so full of itself and so hubris, right? Like nothing can hurt us. We're top dog and stuff like that. We're the smartest kids on the block kind of shit. But by the fourth stage, the corruption is so blatant and clear that the empire collapses. So in the first stage, like I told your brother, the first stage, individuals come together to form a group to build great monuments. At the fourth stage of the collapse, that group destroys those symbols and then becomes individualistic. So when that shit was going down on January 6th, you also see it from the left side and the right side.
Yeah.
On the left side, what did the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that do? They started ripping down symbols of what they perceived as oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
But history would deem it as, oh yeah, like these are people who are historical figures, but they wanted to rip down the symbols, the monuments and stuff like that. Christopher Columbus and shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were tearing down symbols on the left, and then the right, they did the Capitol. The Capitol is one of the most sacred things you could ever have, but yet they destroyed it as a group, right? Because it's the fourth turning, where essentially, in order to solve this collapse, we have to allow it to happen, right? Some crises you just have to let happen. That way you recognize and take accountability for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we're going through right now. And a lot of Americans don't want to admit that, but now they're starting to realize it, that no matter what you do, it's like catching a falling knife. So it's best just to get the fuck out of the way and prepare yourself for shit hitting the fan. That's why, like in 2020, during the whole entire pandemic, you couldn't get ammo worth of shit, dude. There was no ammo anywhere. It looked like a war zone at
Yeah.
places. That's how quickly shit will hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
So for like all those liberal people and
That's
shit,
already happening with the eggs, dog.
right? And that's all because of all the money printing.
Go to your
And-
local farmer and get them from the farmer itself, or get your own chickens.
Right, but remember, they were even shutting down local farmers, and they were, you know, oh, now you're essential. We can't literally put a gun to your head, but we'll just call you essential.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to go to work because you have to die in order for the better good of everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah,
All right.
check out that movie on Amazon Prime. It's called
Yeah,
Drake.
I'll give it a check. I'll check it out, dog. Yeah. To the listeners, yeah, check that out. Where can they find us, Dylan? Where can they find us, Dill baby? They want to get a hold of us.
You guys can find us on YouTube at Truth Over Facts on our channel there. Otherwise, you can check us out on Twitter. It's at Truth
Underscore.
_over Facts on Twitter. Hit us up on there. We'll even try to do like a live session one of these times and stuff.
And then what's our email again? truthoverfacts@gmail.com.
Yep, Truth Over Facts podcast.
Oh, truthoverfactspodcast@gmail.com. And then
Yep.
tomorrow, we'll get together and we'll break down this State of the Union speech, and we'll have that ready for you guys on Wednesday.
Yep. I'm Dylan. I'm out.
And I'm Ron. Yeah, I'm out. You guys all have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace.